and Communication 2025, which is being conducted purely in the virtual mode. We are very much honored to have Padma Shri Professor Ashutosh Sharma as the chief guest for this inaugural function. And we also acknowledge the presence of our patrons, Professor Priyadarshan Patra, Vice Chancellor, NIST University, and Professor Prakash Kumar Hota, Vice Chancellor, DRIEMS University, in our midst today. Because these are the two institutions those are co-hosts of this particular event. Today, we are living in a world which is increasingly driven by data, computation, as well as widespreading connectivity that we enjoy today. This has, in fact, given rise to many other challenges. And in fact, this has challenged the research community to develop technologies that are environmentally sustainable, energy efficient, and also socially responsible. That's a big challenge for us at this present time in which we are living. Therefore, this conference brings together brilliant minds from academia and industry to explore the intersection of these three very concepts of computing, communication, and also sustainability, a confluence that will help realize a more sustainable digital future, which is in store for us, at least for the next generation. I'm sure the wide range of topics that will be covered through the keynote talks, there are in fact 3 of those, and technical presentations, quite engaging. And perhaps it will pave the way for building technologies, or at least to conceptualize theories, practices, technologies, and implementations that are not only intelligent and efficient, but also ethical and sustainable for future generation. That's the key issue. To make our technology ethical and sustainable, that's a real challenge in the present time in which we are living. Now, this conference has been conceptualized to provide a platform for knowledge sharing and collaboration among the researchers, among the peers working in different institutions. Now, with this objective in mind, this conference, in order to make this conference more inclusive and accessible to all, there is no registration fee charged neither for the contributors nor for the attendees. It's completely free of cost, because the very objective is to make things inclusive and accessible for all. I urge the participants, wherever you are located, even if you are located in a remote place, you can always take full advantage of this conference. And I would urge you to actively participate in the deliberations, do interact with the presenters, do interact with the keynote speakers, and make the best out of this conference. And I would also encourage, please pass on this message to others so that people can join in large numbers in the coming editions. Little bit about the background of this conference, about the academic aspects. Now, this is being the first edition, and within a very short time, this was planned. And in fact, we have received about 137 research articles. And after a very rigorous review process, because each of the papers were reviewed at least by 3 reviewers, we could accommodate only 21 articles, which will be published in the post-conference edited volumes. Without taking much of your time, I would like to conclude. Before I conclude, I will fail if I fail in my duty if I do not express my heartfelt gratitude to the organizing committee, the session chairs, those who will be chairing 3 different parallel sessions that will start from 2 o'clock onwards, the reviewers, those who have given the time to very carefully, meticulously review the papers, give their feedback, and help to revise the papers to the form in which we find today. And also, I would like to thank the volunteers who have spent a lot of time in providing the logistics, arranging the network connectivity, and many other aspects that they have taken care, whose tireless efforts and dedication have made this conference possible. I also thank our keynote speakers and also for the contributions that will undoubtedly inspire our collective journey. Once again, I sincerely thank all the participants for your keen interest in this conference. Even if it's the first edition, we find there's a good number of research scholars, the researchers, the peers, those who have joined this event. And I wish you all a fruitful and intellectually enriching experience. Thank you very much. Over to you.
Thank you, Professor Patra, for your warm and thoughtful welcome address that sets the tone for this conference. It is my privilege to invite Professor Dr. Priyadarshan Patra, Honorable Vice Chancellor of NIST University, to address the audience. Over to you, sir.
Thank you. Esteemed chief guest, dignitaries, distinguished researchers and colleagues, industry leaders, delegates, and students. It is my great honor to welcome you to the International Conference on Sustainable Computing and Communications, ICSCC 2025. As a patron of this conference and Vice Chancellor of NIST University, I am excited about this vibrant confluence of minds for a shared purpose where technology and sustainability walk hand in hand. Computing and communication are the lifeblood of modern life. In an era defined by exponential technological growth, the question before us is no longer, can we build smarter systems? But can we build responsible, sustainable, and inclusive networks and systems? From e-waste to spectrum efficiency, the stakes are higher than ever. We must view these not just as technical challenges, but as moral imperatives which define our present era. And that makes this conference both timely and crucial. Allow me to highlight a few recent advancements that are shaping this domain. Take, for example, green AI. New approaches in model compression, federated learning, and energy-aware training are significantly reducing the carbon cost of deep learning. Neuromorphic computing, inspired by the brain, the next-gen computing paradigm offers ultra-low power processing for edge devices and intelligent IoT. Now take the 6G and intelligent surfaces, 5G, 6G, the next generation telecommunications. These are enabling more energy efficient wireless communication through smart signal routing and ambient backscatter technologies. What about carbon-aware cloud? These are enabling technologies for more energy efficient wireless, more energy efficient real-time carbon intensity data to schedule tasks. Platforms like Microsoft Azure, for example, implements this, has begun implementing, so that the tasks are low emission, scheduled in low emission zones dynamically. And coming to the hardware side of things, there is bio-inspired and biodegradable electronics. Researchers are now exploring devices made from silk, cellulose, and organic polymers as well to address the looming e-waste crisis. These innovations represent not just technological evolution, but ethical reorientation for our generation. India's moment of leadership here, India's vision through programs like Semicon India, Digital Green Mission, and National Quantum Mission positions us as a leader in not only tech innovation, but tech for good as well. We are uniquely positioned to create scalable, sustainable, and socially relevant technologies. I believe Our academic institutions must lead this journey. Now, NIST University's commitment to innovation and sustainability. Let me say a few words about it. At NIST, we have redefined our academic mission around purpose-driven research and transformative education. Our global innovation centers focus on future in the areas such as communications, next-gen communications, semiconductors, AI, and biotechnology, not in silos, but with real-world partnerships and clear sustainability lens to evaluate. We aim not just to publish papers, but to create knowledge and ecosystems that improve lives, uplift communities, and protect our planet. A message to researchers and students, to the scholars and young technologies in this event. This is your moment. The world is waiting not just for next generation technology, but for next generation thinking. Ask deeper questions, collaborate across disciplines and institutions. Design not only for performance, but for planet and people. So in closing, as you inaugurate this ICSCC inaugural conference edition, I thank the organizing committee, our academic partners, and industry collaborators for bringing this platform to life. Let this conference not be just about ideas, but about action. Not just about innovation, but about impact. Let us be guided by the conviction that technology must serve sustainability, not the other way around. Thank you and Jai Hind.
Thank you, Professor Patra, for your inspiring words and for your support in shaping this conference. I now request Professor Dr. Prakash Kumar Hota, Honorable Vice Chancellor of DRIEMS University, to share his thoughts for this occasion. Over to you, sir.
Thank you. Good morning to all of you. Honorable Chief Guest Padma Shri Professor Ashutosh Sharma ji, President of Indian National Science Academy, and the Patron Professor Priyadarshan Patra, Vice Chancellor of NIST University, the General Chair Professor Manas Ranjan Patra, and conveners, all the organizers, and all the delegates who are attending this conference. My congratulations to the organizers, and I am privileged to share my views on this occasion. First of all, as the topic talks about sustainable computing and communication. What it means? It exactly means that, particularly it refers to the environmentally and socially responsible development, use, and disposal of technology. Particular focus on reducing the energy consumption, minimizing the electronic waste, and promoting ethical practices. You can see it is a multidisciplinary kind of field that integrates technology, environmental sciences, and social consideration. And the purpose is to create a more sustainable future. And why it matters actually? Sustainable computing different kinds of computing we have heard, but sustainable computing, it is having certain parameters. People are thinking of what do you mean by that? Many people talk about green computing. Many people are talking about today the machine learning and the AI. All those things, is it sustainable computing? What I can foresee is that sustainable computing matters because of 3 to 4 factors. One is the reduced environmental impact. Everybody is concerned about that. By reducing energy consumption and electronic waste, sustainable computing may help mitigate climate change and we can protect our environment. Second thing, obviously, when you are talking about sustainable computing, we can expect economic benefits out of that. How? because you have to use the energy efficient technology. Resource optimization can be done, which can lead to cost saving as well as increased productivity. And third thing, which our predecessor professor has already talked about, social equity. Social equity means it can help that everyone has access to technology and everyone can derive benefits out of its advancement. And last but not the least, I'll talk about the innovation. India is progressing. The innovation index of India has increased from 40 to something around. Gradually it is increasing and increasing. Innovation means when you're talking about sustainable computing, all our computer architects, scientists, they are trying to create sustainable technology which can automatically lead to the innovation in the areas like renewable energy, resource management, and most importantly, advanced material. Today, in the age of material science also, we have to create a new material where the sustainability is inbuilt. Now, if I talk about the key aspects, green computing, the other speakers have already told, ethical consideration they have told. So I want to say that, first of all, we have to change our mindset that the computing hardware, software, or the consumption, energy consumption in data center, how we have to reduce that. If we reduce that, then automatically the environmental impact of all this communication and computing environment will be reduced. Then the resource efficiency means in the sustainable computing, the first aspect is that you have to optimize the resources. What do we mean by those resources? Resource means energy has to be optimized, materials has to be optimized, and the data also it has to be optimized. So in both in computing as well as communication system. How it can be achieved? This can be achieved through techniques like all of you already know, it is a cloud computing, virtualization, and efficient algorithm can be applied. Then, so computing for sustainability is another key aspect. Computing for sustainability means it involves computing and communication techniques or technology to address the environmental challenges such as climate change, resource depletion, and most importantly, today we are facing the biodiversity loss. That has to be also addressed. How can you do that? You can include various sensors for environmental modeling, developing smart cities, and creating more green buildings. So all our experts will talk about that. I want to say that particularly in the higher education, combining research and teaching is a challenging task. So, but it is needed. So, to do combined research and teaching, three important concepts I have already thought of. First one is that careful planning has to be there. Then you have to innovative idea you have to create each faculty member. And third, most important thing is the collaboration. And this arranging this kind of conference, it is the best way to collaborate with different faculty members of different institutes, industry personnel, and other things. Then only a faculty member can get the idea. He can share his idea. He can refine his idea. Once he refined and developed new idea, new thoughts, then he can pass it through its students. Because we need our students should be competent enough and should have proper skills which industry needs and the society needs so that they can create an impact in the world, in the professional world. So that's what I am talking to. I am appealing to all the faculty members across the higher education institute. Always try to integrate the research into your teaching because research can inform as well as enrich your teaching. On the other way, teaching can stimulate and disseminate your research. Then only students will be interested to hear you, to learn from you. Not only that, always encourage your students to come to the research. They should create their own research plan. These are the roles of today's faculty members in any higher education system. Without wasting much time, I am very much privileged to be here. I congratulate all the host, everybody who has organized this kind of particular scheme or this particular this kind of conference. This actually helps all our faculty members who are attending this for their collaboration and to contribute towards something to the student as well as to himself and as well as to the nation. Thank you all.
Thank you, Professor Hota, for your valuable insights and encouragement. It is indeed a distinct honor to welcome our chief guest, Padma Shri Professor Dr. Ashutosh Sharma. Currently, Professor Sharma is holding the position of Institute Chair Professor at IIT Kanpur and President of the Indian National Science Academy. He was the Secretary to the Government of India, heading its Department of Science and Technology for about 5 years. He was a professor and head of chemical engineering and the founding coordinator of Nanosciences Center and Advanced Imaging Center at IIT Kanpur. He received his PhD from the State University of New York at Buffalo after completing MS from the Pennsylvania State University and BTech from IIT Kanpur. He has a broad international experience as a research faculty at SUNY Buffalo School of Medicine, visiting faculty at University of Texas at Austin, University of Western Ontario, University of Erlangen, and the World Class University Program of South Korea, and as a member of the European Research Commission. Most of his research contributions are highly interdisciplinary, spanning a wide range in nanotechnology, thin polymer films, nanocomposites, and devices in energy, health, and environment. Professor Sharma received Padma Shri in the category of Science and Engineering in 2025 for his contributions in nanoscience and nanotechnology. He is a recipient of many awards, including the inaugural Infosys Prize in Engineering and Computer Science, Bessel Research Award of the Humboldt Foundation, J.C. Bose Fellowship, Bhatnagar Prize, Homi J. Bhabha Award of UGC, Lifetime Achievement Award of the Indian Science Congress, UNESCO, etc. Sir, may I now request you to deliver the inaugural address? Over to you, Prof.
Thank you very much indeed. And I'm so glad to see that we have a conference on sustainability of communication and computing. So these are indeed the two very major themes of the times in which we live. And we have heard two very compelling lectures already from the Vice Chancellors, Dr. Prakash and Dr. Patra. So indeed, the importance of this theme is growing almost every day. In fact, about a year ago, we started a series of workshops and conclaves supported by Indian National Science Academy on this particular theme. A new master's program has started in IIT Kanpur under the School of Sustainability, and it deals with two aspects. One is, of course, exponential technologies like AI, ML, quantum for sustainability, and the reverse of it, which is the sustainability of these new technologies themselves. This is very important because, as we know, that if we were to look at the energy footprint of digital cyber world, which includes everything that we do from emailing to surfing to AR, VR to large language models. If we were to look at the energy consumption, it's already about 4% of the total energy consumption. I have no doubt that within a few decades, that the carbon footprint and the energy footprint of digital cyber world would start competing very seriously with the physical world. So it becomes so important that we start preparing for it now in terms of how we design things, how we use them, how we manufacture them, how we dispose them, how do we make them more energy efficient, how material efficient, and so on. So, of course, if we were to look at the sustainability aspects of communication, computing, and indeed other emerging critical technologies, and we were to look at their impact, we must look at this impact in a very broad sense. So there are environmental impact. So that is in terms of carbon emission, about in terms of energy consumption. That is in terms of environment, well, recycling of hardware, for example, making the software more energy efficient, making the chips more energy efficient, looking at new materials which may be biodegradable, maybe have less impact on an environment and so on. So certainly there is environmental impact that we need to factor in. Also look at non-renewable materials, for example, the metal oxides of different kinds, many different noble metals and other stuff that goes into our electronics. So all of that may not be easily renewable if you were to go down about a century from now on. So clearly, recycle becomes important, redesign becomes important, reuse becomes important. All of that is very important. So these are the environmental aspects of sustainability of digital and cyber. But beyond environmental aspects, we must look at the psychological impacts. So, a responsible technology, a sustainable technology, must also take into account what kind of psychological impact that this is going to make on individuals. Just to give you an example, what about the cognitive overload? So there was a time, even in my own life, let's say 30 years ago, certainly 40 years ago, while that there were no emails, there was no internet, there was no mobile, there was nothing, no Google, no LLM for sure. Okay, so there was no, in a sense, well, this was slow life. Okay, I mean, of course, it has pros and cons, but we must look at the lights and shadows of all kind of technologies. So while we capture the light very well, because certainly there's a lot of economic impact, so every industry, of course, has interest in the light of that technology. We rarely capture the shadows of the technology, and a whole lot of these shadows of technology reside in the life cycle analysis of products. They also reside in the nexus between different activities. For example, agriculture and water and energy are intimately connected with each other. We couldn't possibly consider water in isolation with agriculture because about 70% water may be used for agriculture. So it's clear that we have to factor in a whole lot of not just environmental but also psychological impact. So what is this psychological impact? Clearly, people think differently today than they did ever before. There are many different dimensions. One of them is cognitive offloading, and what that means is, look, I don't want to make a lot of decisions in complexity. Okay, there are a whole lot of armload of data coming all the time. The situation is complex. So how do I make decisions? Right. So I outsource decision making to algorithms. Okay, which is fair enough, of course, that we need to do that. We need to do it quickly and we need to do it at scale. And we don't want too many errors, which are human errors. But the flip side is that the brain becomes less and less capable of making these decisions, which it was forced to make when there were no machines. So a cognitive offloading of our task may have serious consequences for our ability to have common sense, to connect different dots of knowledge, to have to make decisions in complexity, and so on. Another aspect, of course, of sustainability of digital cyber is its sociological impact. Now we might think that systems of governance that we have, the brand of democracy we have, different regulations and governance that we have, all of them depend on the technology that we live with. So there's always been true in the entire human history. There are different kinds of governance, centralized versus distributed, and even within distributed, there are many different ways of what you call democracy. All of that, also depends on what kind of communication we have, what kind of, for example, rise of social media is having a great deal of impact on society and also individuals' thinking. So, what kind of governance and democracy we have might critically depend on the kind of technologies and the regulation of these technologies. Regulation is a tricky thing because we must balance innovation and the new quality of life that it offers. We must balance that with regulation. So regulations cannot be very tight, cannot stifle innovation going forward. So this is a very delicate balance. It requires a great deal of wisdom to arrive at that balance. Another aspect is, look, that there is no authority. There is no single authority which is into governing these technologies. No, of course, that what we need is a global platform which has participation of all the stakeholders of both technologies and society working together in order to have a dynamic understanding of what kind of regulations, policies, rules, laws, and all of that is actually required, together with the cultural transformations which are required to deal with all of this. Of course, there is the economic impact beyond social impact, and so one has to look at all of that. And now, one of the aspects of all these impacts, you see, if you were to look at the general trend in technology, from starting from the first industrial revolution, the trend is that the technology usually reduces diversity. It reduces diversity because diversity is often not very conducive for economics. So when we have a more standard kind of products, when we have some languages rather than many languages, when we have one way of doing things which is kind of standard, similar kind of food people eating from north to south, and all of that, what that basically does, and say similar kind of communication and ideas, what that does is that it is often conducive for economy, and therefore it tends to reduce diversity. So less efficient, less optimal things slowly gets eased out from the system. But that is actually a shadow of technology as well. So while it may have some economic impact, which is positive, at the same time, you see that the world is not actually, if you look at nature, nature doesn't care about optimality, it cares about diversity. So there is a very fine balance between optimality and diversity. And if we were to promote only efficiency, forgetting diversity and inclusion, it is going to be catastrophic. And so one has to watch out that, of course, rise of digital cyber technologies of various kinds, whether it reduces diversity and inclusion, or in which way can it help inclusion and diversity. For example, real time good translation between languages should increase diversity, because I don't need to learn actually only one language in this whole world in order to communicate with all of you. I can talk in my mother tongue, and then real time that this is being communicated in your accent and your language and your kind of thoughts. So therefore, it respects diversity, it cultivates diversity, that kind of technology. And so we have to be watchful in saying, look, if we wanted sustainable world, we wanted a more diverse, inclusive world, then we have to evolve the right kind of communication and computing technologies that respect that. Of course, so that's one aspect that becomes very important going forward. Um, there are lots of new challenges by being thrown up. I would conclude now very soon by pointing out one overarching challenge. So, of course, two overarching challenges that we are dealing with today are the rise of intelligent machines, which is the integration of communication, computing, autonomous decision making, autonomous action, and all of that. So basically, you can call it Industry 4.0, you can call it IoT, you can call it all of that stuff. Basically, this digital, cyber, physical universe. So there's the cyber physical systems. In fact, when I was in Department of Science and Technology, we started a national mission on cyber physical systems worth about rupees 4,500 crores. It has taken very deep roots, and in fact, I'm so glad we thought about it 7 years ago. Now it has become rather more fashionable, but people were just waking up about 7, 8 years ago, saying, "Hey, what's happening with all this AI and all this stuff which is happening?" It's not just AI, but basically integration of cyber with physical. Now the next generation challenge in that, and of course, by the way, the quantum technology mission has also been launched, which was formulated several years ago. And so this is going to have another impact on communication and computing technologies. But now, what is the next wave of major challenge? The next wave of major challenge is to integrate biological in this pair of cyber and physical. Okay, so how is it going to happen? So some of cyber physical is blending with life. It would get into our brains. It is certainly getting into our bodies, our nervous system, all of that. And some of the biological would find itself on the cyber physical machines and the chips. So neuromorphic computing, that's just the design principle. It may be, inspired by how the brain functions and so on. But I'm not talking about only inspiration, which is biomimetic. I'm talking about actual integration of biological material, life, if you would, into cyber physical systems and vice versa. So this is not science fiction. It is happening now in research domain and is going to increasingly happen in terms of its large scale applications in society. So again, this is a very delicate thing, and this is going to throw up many new challenges and many new shadows of technology that, if we had not mastered them in time, can be catastrophic, not just for planet Earth, not just for humans, but all life forms on Earth. Now, this is not some kind of apocalyptic thinking, that this is very much the reality. Today, there are technologies which are being used increasingly for things like creating the soldiers of the future by tinkering with DNA material. And all of that is happening, and more of it would happen. So that we have to be ever watchful. Of course, there is another very big challenge to be mastered, which is related to rise of AR, VR technologies. Now, you see, the technologies of tomorrow, they arise in response to the basic desires and needs of the mind. So AR, VR, for example, the virtual reality, augmented reality, mixed reality, all of that, it arises because we want to create a world which we can control. That is going to give us the pleasure that we demand and no pain. So part of that is of course driven by that. Of course, a whole lot of digital twins are driven by commercial reasons and the reasons of efficiency and simulation. But if you were to look at the deepest desire of mind, it is to live in a world it can control and it can create, and to live forever. These are two very fundamental desires of mind. Now, of course, that in response to these desires of mind, we get new technologies, and the rise of AR, VR presents new challenges. Would we completely start living in a world which is divorced from the realities of the physical world, for example? Do we live increasingly in that world so that we may forget the environmental aspects of the physical world in which we live, and so on? So there are a whole lot of these issues that, philosophical issues, societal issues, psychological issues that one would have to deal with in order to deal with responsible communication and computing, in order to deal with sustainable computing and communication. And so I may conclude by saying, look, okay, of course, there are going to be a whole lot of other challenges, secondary challenges, whether they are related to not just governance, but ethics and morals and everything, the societal order and structure and processes at large, whether it is judiciary or anything else that we can think of. Every single aspect of our lives is going to be affected. So, I mean, starting now, it becomes clear that we should increasingly think about ESG concerns, ESG concerns for every enterprise, for every organization, for every corporation and every governmental organization. It becomes increasingly important to focus on ESG aspects. So ESG aspects not just for the physical world, but also for the digital cyber world. And I'm so glad in concluding that you are actually focusing on this aspect. I'm very, very happy. This activity is going to gain momentum. So it is only the beginning. I see now increasingly starting last year. I see more and more focus on these activities. I see people are seriously thinking about it, and there are people are devising ways of measuring these things, because whatever we cannot quantify and measure will have a very little understanding and impact, and the measures to address the problems. So one of the first operational aspect is, how do we measure the impact? How do we measure the impact of digital, social, communication, computing, and so on? How do we measure their impact on environment, on society, on psychology, and economics, and all of these aspects? The second thing is, how do we are able to figure out the shadows of each of these technologies in each of these domains, And finally, what kind of action map and roadmap can we come up with in order to address these problems? And this requires not only participation of scientists, okay, but it requires participation of all stakeholders of society. So while as scientists, as technologists, we have been kind of ignoring social sciences and humanities, even things like abstract things like philosophy, that would no longer be possible in order for us humans to have efficient survival on planet Earth. Thank you very much again. I wish the conference all the very best in delivering.
Thank you very much, sir, for your great words of wisdom. Hopefully, am I clearly audible to everyone? Yeah. It's great pleasure to hear the speakers, keynotes, and the guest of the morning like Dr. Priyadarshan, Dr. Prakash, and Padma Shri, Dr. Ashutosh, sir. Thank you and our heartfelt thanks for your valuable time that you have seek out for this inaugural of this conference. On the behalf of organizing committee, I, Dr. Payal Bansal, privileged and grateful to all the speakers, keynote addresses, researchers who have contributed their valuable research for this conference, and I wish the great success of this conference. And a special thanks to Dr. Brojo Mishra for taking the initiative without any personal interest to making such a great initiative in sake of India Digital India 2030 vision. So I'm very much thankful all the organizers, student committee members, TPC members, and session chairs, including all the dignitaries who have spared their valuable time for this inaugural ceremony. Thank you so much. And as an organizing committee and TPC committee, I wish all the great success of this conference. Thank you very much. May I request all the delegates, researchers, please put your camera on for a minute so that we can capture this moment as a memory of this conference inaugural ceremony. Thank you so much, sir, for your valuable time, your research experience, and your words of wisdom that you have shared with all of the new generation. Thank you so much. Over to you, Brozo, sir.
All of you, please switch on your camera so that we can take a photo. All the participants, please switch on your camera so that we can take a photo. Gopal sir, please capture some screenshot.
Yes, sir. Yes.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Okay. Thank you to all of you.
Thank you, everyone. Dr. Prakash, Dr. Priyadarshan, Dr. Manas, Dr. Chief Guest of the Morning, Dr. Ashutosh, and rest of the speakers, researchers who have joined this inaugural. Now, the further details are already communicated to all of the participants. The session will be continued according to the detailed schedule.